And political analyst Rich Rubino here with us now to make sense of some of what he said. Rich, I have to ask you your initial thoughts on this push now that he says he's going to file those articles of impeachment.
Yeah, Al Green tried this in the first 2 years of the Trump administration, but he did not receive the support of the leadership. Green represents a very Democratic district in southern Houston. It went 71% last time around for Harris. The last two times he tried it, he could not get any Democrats who represented congressional districts that were more or less competitive. It would be obviously if this were to go to the floor, my guess is he could potentially get a couple of votes from members who represent congressional districts that are demonstrably Democratic. But the Democratic leadership really has no appetite for this. They're going to election in 2026, and they want to run on a positive agenda. They don't want to necessarily run on being the party that's going to impeach Donald Trump. Now, that being said, the last time around, they did eventually, first of all, when it came to the Ukraine issue, they did receive a groundswell of support within the Democratic caucus, and then finally, the January 6th impeachment, which happened actually right before he was about to leave office, he received pretty much every Democratic member of the United States vote to convict him, as well as 6 members to convict him. So usually, this is kind of a grassroots movement. It starts from a member who's kind of on the fringe, but eventually it might get to the point where the more moderate members start to support it. But, you know, impeachment is very much arbitrary. Gerald Ford in 1970, he was the House Minority Leader from Michigan, and he basically said that impeachment is whatever the majority party believes it to be at the time. There's no necessarily what a high crime and misdemeanor is not necessarily spelled out explicitly in the United States Constitution.
And it is something, as we're taking a live look there at the White House, we've already gotten some responses, Rich, as well, from some other congressmen on the other side of the political party. Do want to show you this tweet that we have from Fox's Chad Pergram. Want to read it out for you as well, because this is the GOP Oklahoma Senator Mullen on Fox Business. They are talking about the Texas Representative Al Green on wanting to impeach Trump. He says that I kind of remember that the Constitution says that the only reason to impeach the president is for treason, bribery, and high crime. I didn't know that dastardly deeds done and dastardly deeds proposed was one of those. It is absolutely laughable. He says, I mean, third time's a charm, I guess. I don't even know what to say here. We'll stop there for now with that statement, but it sort of hits on what you just mentioned. Again, the articles of impeachment, the idea of impeachment has changed so much throughout history as well. But this is, if he does file these articles, will be Trump's third time to be brought up on these impeachment charges. What are your thoughts on that overall?
I think it's very slim. Again, you're talking about a senator from Oklahoma. Oklahoma is a state where Donald Trump literally won every solitary county, all 77 counties in the last presidential election. It's obviously in his political interest to defend Donald Trump. My guess is if it did come to the floor, he would probably get about 50 to 60 votes, potentially Democrats, no Republicans would vote for it. It would be, it's almost impossible right now for me to envision a scenario where it goes to the entire House of Representatives, which is controlled by the Republican Party, and somehow the Democrats all vote ecumenically for the impeachment, and then Republicans come along and vote for it as well. And then it goes to the United States Senate, and then it gets passed in the United States Senate. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be something there won't be a more serious impeachment article later on in the Trump presidency. There probably will, but it would have to be something that would have the support of the Democratic leaders. And just like in 2017 and in 2019, when Al Green proposed impeachment for Donald Trump, he did not have the support of the Democratic leadership for that effort.
And I want to mention that even back in 2020, today, the Associated Press reminds us that the Senate did acquit Donald Trump of his first impeachment. So a bit of history tying into that speech as well today. But let's look at this live view that we have right now in Gaza as well. Of course, this is a big part of why, again, the Texas representative decided to bring this up and wake up some of those comments that President Trump made about the Gaza Strip and wanting to see a new vision for its future, as well as after that meeting with the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Also want to put up this tweet that we have as well from Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He's making his rounds right now in Central and South America, saying that Gaza must be free from Hamas. As the President of the United States shared today, the United States stands ready to make Gaza beautiful again. Our pursuit is one of lasting peace in the region for all people. With all of this attention right now on the Middle East, specifically on Gaza, do we feel like this conversation is going to go away at any point, or is this going to continue to be a sticking point for both Republicans and Democrats?
I think that this was really a major announcement that Donald Trump made. It caught a lot of people off guard. It caught a lot of people in his own party off guard. And it really made the plight of the 2.1 million people live in Gaza. It put them front and center. So now you're seeing a lot of coverage of what Gaza actually looks like inside Gaza and how really awful the situation is inside Gaza. Maybe there potentially will be some sympathy for the people of Gaza. You saw even someone like Marco Rubio saying, make Gaza beautiful again. But I don't think that there's going to be a serious effort to actually occupy and be hegemonic over Gaza, if you will. I think that there's always going to be this foreign policies. Usually it's going to be the United States in terms of their relationship with China, their relationship with Russia, but obviously what's going on in the Ukraine and the current situation with the precarious ceasefire between Israel and Hamas is certainly going to be an issue. But obviously this is something that puts at center stage the plight of what's going to happen to Gaza. And certainly after the war, you're going to have a situation where there are going to be a lot of displaced people. And there are probably going to be some on the fringes that are going to say that maybe the United States should take it over. But I don't think that's going to be a serious conversation.
And lastly, Rich, before I let you go, do you see there being some sort of bipartisan solution that could get both parties here in the United States to agree on what the best path in their eyes is for the Middle East to move forward?
It's a great question. And the obviously answer that I think most people in the mainstream would say that there has to be some sort of binational state. There has to be some state where there's an Israel that's protected, and there has to be both the West Bank and potentially in Gaza that is also protected. There has to be some sort of a Palestinian state. I think without a Palestinian state, with the continued Israel, whether you consider it an occupation or not, I think that potentially you're going to continue to have more and more conflict, more and more contention between the two. But there has to somehow be a binational state. How that's going to be effectuated, I don't know. I know that was what talked about with when Bill Clinton back in 2000 tried to negotiate between Ehud Barak and Israel and Yasser Arafat, who was the leader of the Palestine Liberation Organization. They tried to negotiate something. Something was not settled. The other thing you do have is within the Palestinian territories, you have a divide there as well between the Fatah party, which is seen as more moderate, who basically runs the West Bank, and that's controlled by Mahmoud Abbas. And then you have Hamas, which is currently controlling Gaza. Potentially, I think that you wonder if there's going to have some settlement where you actually have to negotiate with Hamas. I don't know, but I think generally speaking, the United States policy is to negotiate with Fatah in the West Bank, but not to negotiate with Hamas in the Gaza. That's the current state of affairs.
And it is something that we're going to continue to follow right here on Live Now from Fox. Again, political analyst Rich Rubino helping us to make a bit more sense of what's the top news that's coming out of Washington. We